Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern time zone as we get to ride home with you in the afternoon. You can find us many different ways on Abundance Television, which is found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget, up in North Alabama, you can find us on Channel 182. That's on Charter Networks. Podcast found on thenewscasters.com. And also on the radio, WZLA. That's the biggest country station out there in South Carolina. So we wanted to appreciate you for letting us be a part of your life. Continue sending email, Donna@DonnasEdge.com, Donna@DonnasEdge.com. Got my very good friend with me right now. He is an attorney and a speaker, and he is an author. His name is Attorney Don Brown. This is Attorney Don Brown. So we got three going on there. But thank you so much. I know you're very busy taking care of family, taking care of business, and just being a patriot for the world. And we definitely appreciate you doing that, Don. Thank you.
Good to be back. Speaking of Patriots, I was very honored to be in attendance last night at the Lee Greenwood Patriots Awards that Richard Childress was hosting at his vineyard in Lexington, North Carolina. Lee Greenwood, Joey Jones, Richard Childress, a bunch of other NASCAR folks, and just benefactors were raising money, to buy houses for our veterans who have been injured in Iraq and Afghanistan, and oftentimes have lost limbs. And so it was a great event to be there. Even Paula Dean was there. So I was surrounded by Patriots last night and just sat back and enjoyed the show. Just grateful to be there.
Well, did she have any kind of a butter casserole or anything like that? I'm speaking of Paula Dean.
I didn't ask her about a casserole. As a matter of fact, Paula Dean did not even speak. She was there to support. All the other ones spoke one way or the other. Joey Jones from Fox News, of course, the Marine who is now one of the hosts on Fox and Friends Weekend, was the master of ceremonies. But some people went up. Some friends of mine were more in awe of Paula Dean than anybody else, so they went up to talk to her. Some of the ladies there, but it was nice to be there anyway.
Yeah, she's another example of someone who was a former Democrat. And I'm telling you what, she's a patriot. And, my grandparents who were Democrat, I'm pretty sure they would be on the Republican side at this point.
There are a lot of Democrats from the old school who would certainly be rolling over in their grave if they knew what's happened to the modern Democrat party. For sure. Matter of fact, we had two Charlotte city council members just leave the Democrat Party. And I'm not sure if they went independent. I was told last night one of them went Republican. Of course, I wish they could get reelected, but it's going to be difficult. Maybe they're banking on their name recognition, but they left the party, and that says a lot because the Charlotte City Council is pretty out there radical itself. So, it's happening all over the place. Hopefully it'll continue.
Well, in light of what happened this past weekend, the assassination attempt, I think now you still have the radical folks out there. I think they mainly do it for attention, Don. Some lonely people who just need attention any way they can get it. So they're going that route. But I'm seeing a changeover also in other folks. It's like, hey, enough's enough.
Lost you. Saying yes, we are definitely seeing a changeover and some change in some of the rhetoric. Of course, you still see the radical fringes out there that are claiming it was staged and this kind of stuff. But if you're there and you heard those gunshots go off, you know it wasn't staged, and a shotgun is not staged. The interesting thing about this nutcase, Cole Allen, I think his name is, he was the teacher of the year in Los Angeles County or city schools, one or the other, 31 years old. You have to, wow, how in the world are we getting people in our school system like that are so radical they would do something like that? I mean, it's just an indictment on the screening process, I suppose, that this guy got through. Of course, I guess, you know that most of these teachers and professors are liberal, but, you don't know that they're crazy enough to try something like that. But anyway, it's great that nobody was harmed. And, the Secret Service did a great job. So did the Metro Police and the FBI. But they're going to still have to beef some measures up a little bit. This is the very same hotel that Reagan was shot at back some 40 years ago. I don't know if people realize that or not. He was coming out the back of the same hotel and was shot by John Hinckley. So having events at these hotels underscores why the president is trying to get a secure ballroom in the White House would certainly help a lot for situations like this, for sure.
My first thought process about the nut, when I found out what made his living by being a teacher, I'm thinking of all the young minds he has poisoned, throughout the years. How long had he been teaching?
Well, he's 31.
And not that long.
Yeah, he's 31. So I don't know how long he's been teaching. It could have been, I'm understanding he's actually had internships with NASA. Apparently, he was a very bright person, and it shows that being bright means you could be stupid and bright at the same time. Just because you score high on some sort of test and are able to get internships and scholarships because you can work math or whatever it is they're testing on them these days doesn't have anything to do with moral bearing or wisdom or judgment. But I don't know how long he'd been in the school system. It had to have been several years, I think, for him to have qualified for Teacher of the Year. But like you say, think about the young minds that are molding. And that's really what's so scary about it. This is one of the reasons we have to have school choice. We were talking off the air about we have tragedy in our family, and lost my niece and my sister's raising the children. And she was talking about that my niece and her brother had gone to Terra Sia Christian School, which was founded in 1937, and they require Bible teaching and memorization every year. And now the little 6-year-old who lost her mom, my grandniece, attends a charter school in eastern Washington County where they're teaching Bible every day as a part of history. And that's an example. Charter school is an example where you can form your own school, and then the dollars follow the parents. And then there's a public dollars follow parents, and you can set your own curriculum. And this is the type of thing we're going to need in education. We're going to have more competition. We're going to have more Bible teaching. We're going to have more common sense. We need to be teaching American exceptionalism and the value of the U.S. Constitution. We need to teach what evil is about as well. And I have beat this drum with some of my friends in the General Assembly, and there was an attempt at one point to try to teach the Constitution required for graduation in North Carolina. It got bottled up by some senators who are no longer in the Senate. Hopefully that's going to change, and we'll get back to that. But it's a zeroing back in on point. The fact that this guy was, as you say, had access to influence so many young people is one of the scariest parts of the story.
Oh, absolutely. So let me ask you another, because I'm hearing all these stupid things all across social media about the whole thing was staged. This guy alone, wouldn't that kind of disrupt that opinion?
Well, of course it would. Look, first of all, you tell me that the blood we saw, they're trying to say they were all staged. You tell me the blood that was on the ear of the president was staged. We watched that on live TV. We saw him start bleeding. Come on. But, these are some of the more radical and fringe elements of the Democrat Party. Unfortunately, those radical and fringe elements are too widespread, which is why we're seeing some folks changing parties. Like I say, even in Charlotte, 2 of them leaving the party, and I think it's a good thing. John Fetterman is the only Democrat in the U.S. Senate that talks with any common sense, and he said you got to have a secure ballroom, and he's supported the administration and ran other places, but there's the whole notion you could stage 3 assassination attempts and get away with it. If you try to stage something like that, it's going to leak out, and then the left-wing press is going to have a field day with the evidence of it. So it's. The notion of it is just beyond crazy, but that doesn't stop him from peddling some of this garbage anyway.
Well, first of all, this is negotiation 101, okay? If you really believed that, you wouldn't let that out yet. You would wait until the evidence got there. If you really believed that,
right,
the other fellow would trip over himself,
No, it's just irresponsible, use of a public microphone. But some people are going to try to convince them of that, continue to do that. It's interesting, you had a lot of liberal members of the press here last night. In fact, after the assassination attempt, they went over into the White House briefing room, and Caitlin Collins is right there on the front she had been there, one of Trump's biggest critics. I don't know who else was in there, but it looks like they had them all in there, liberal and conservative. And I guess they got to see for themselves some of the hatred that they are spewing, by the way. This is something that I don't know if you saw Melania Trump's post on social media. She actually posted this on X, I believe, or Twitter, as we used to call it. Just calling Jimmy Kimmel to task for his hateful violence, inciting rhetoric. And ABC still has the guy on the air from ABC, and then it's Disney, which owns ABC, is responsible for that type of stuff. You don't just joke around saying he was calling her the prospective widow. In other words, as if it's the type of thing he was doing. It's just absolutely totally classless. You can do funny stuff. I mean, they're the great comedians like Johnny Carson and others could do funny stuff and poke fun at both Democrats and Republicans in a way that's funny. But there's nothing funny about something that has to do with assassinations, death, and violence. And, it's got to come to an end.
What was your immediate reaction when you first heard of the assassination attempt?
Well, my immediate reaction is, how in the world is he getting that? First of all, I mean, it's the Secret Service, the D.C. Metro Police did a great job to keep the guy out. My immediate reaction is, how do you even get in to that close with a shotgun? And it's interesting, this guy, he points out that is the assassin, or the attempted assassin, the would-be assassin, whatever you call him. He points out that he brings a shotgun right to the hotel. Nobody's stopping. How does he even breach the outer perimeter? Now, the law enforcement did its job. He did not breach into the room, but he still got too close for comfort. So I guess on the one hand, my first reaction is, I'm glad they did their job. They did their job very effectively. But there's doing your job, and there's the planning stage that allowed. The planning stage was such that you could get somebody to the outer perimeter. You should have to go through more. They ought to have an additional layer there somehow, so you can't even get close to the outer perimeter. So that's my reaction. But I'm glad everybody was okay. And if Trump wanted to come back and finish the dinner, and I think he would have done it if they let him do it. He wanted to do that, but that's just the type of guy he is anyway.
Well, let me ask you another question, and this does seem a little odd to me, and maybe it's not even true. And the word floating around is Vance was the first one ushered out before Trump. Is that true? And why would that have been?
Well, I saw it. It was true. It happened. Mm-hmm. I watched the evacuation process several times. And if you're looking at the stage, Vance is on the right, Trump's on the left of the speaker podium. They're separated by a number of, probably 30, 40 feet. I don't know. It's hard to say, but they were on the opposite sides of a wide, table, where the center of the table was the speaker's podium. And Vance was evacuated immediately, boom, just like that. And there was a delay before the Secret Service team runs across the stage from right to left. Some of them jump across the table and stand as human shields. They pull Trump out. And the interesting thing is that second lady, Usha Vance, I guess her name is, she's trying to break into the cocoon of Secret Service agents surrounding Trump. She's not able to break into the cocoon. Mm-hmm. And she goes down and she crawls out behind the president when the vice president was taken out the other way. I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure why you would get to the vice president first like that. It appears that the Secret Service detail, I don't know why there wasn't a Secret Service detail that came, at least that we didn't see one, coming from the left side of the stage where Trump was to get him out faster. But there was about, 10 seconds probably differential between Vance out and getting Trump out. And I thought it was, I wondered why that was the case. We don't have an answer to that yet. Maybe we'll get some answers.
Well, I'm putting my tinfoil hat on. So I just wanted to ask you a question. Because the shooter got where he got, okay, and because of that incident where actually Vance is led out before Trump is let out, could there be something working on the inside to possibly try to disrupt the Trump administration?
Well, you have to ask that question. It's a healthy thing to ask that question. I can tell you that when you go back to the shooting in Pennsylvania, there's absolutely no question in my mind that there was inexcusable, giving the Secret Service the benefit of the doubt, there was absolute inexcusable, mega negligence to leave the top of that building uncovered, especially when you have drones. You have the ability to put to have seen the top of every building there. Now, bear in mind, this is Secret Service under Biden. They were protecting Trump. They assigned this young lady, who I'm sure she's a very brave young lady, but she comes up to maybe in the middle of Trump's chest, and she could not block the bullet from hitting him elsewhere. And I am extremely concerned of the deliberate shenanigans when it comes to the shooting in Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, the alleged shooter was immediately cremated, and we still don't have any answers. When you cremate him, you've got no DNA, and then we don't have any answers to who he was communicating with before that. We don't have any answers to who he was talking on his cell phone, and I have questions there. Now, with regard to this evacuating Vance first, the question needs to be asked why. You would think, with Trump back in the White House, the Secret Service would be cleaned up some. We're still dealing with a deep state, though. And that's one of the reasons I think that Pam Bondi failed. She had a deep state under her and could not put them into line and some of the things that needed to be done. I don't know the answer to that question. If you've not seen the video, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you on the differential, the time differential. I mean, it wasn't like it was a 1 minute. It was a few seconds that Trump was left there essentially exposed, and it wasn't even getting down. He himself said he didn't want to get down. He wanted to see what was happening. And I'm assuming they were ordering him to get down, and he finally did that. Why they took the vice president out first, I don't know. It could be chaos at a moment, or it could be something else. But we definitely need answers. And hopefully Comey and others are going to talk about Congressman Comey and others are going to investigate this matter and see if we can get an answer to that question, because we need to know.
In today's world, there are cameras everywhere, and I'm going back to Pennsylvania. This is where, regular folks like me walking around on the grounds had video of the guy up on the roof, and it's almost like the police were told not to look. It just felt that way. It looked that way. Maybe things are not as they seem. I don't know, but it's just, when you have regular citizens walking around with the camera phones, they're pointing the guy up on the roof, and they're not doing anything about it.
You're exactly right. As I said earlier, it was either criminal negligence on the part of the Secret Service or something worse, and the knowing what I think I know about some of the three other agencies in the federal government, and knowing about their attempts to try and block Trump's reelection for a third time, in my opinion. And then you immediately cremate the body, and you don't give us any answers on who the guy was talking to. Was he talking to somebody inside the government? Was he talking to somebody else? Was he talking to nobody? Was he a lone wolf, or was he not acting alone? That's the question that has to be asked in all of these things. And we don't have any answers at all from Butler, Pennsylvania, and that's also inexcusable.
Yeah, absolutely. We need those answers. Okay. Because of what happened this weekend, the assassination attempt. But before I say that, let me say this. Okay, so I grew up in the 1960s. I remember watching on a black and white television set, like really small television set. In the 1960s, the radicals who are now running the world right now, the college students and whatnot, it was pretty much civil unrest made in the 1960s too. But do you feel that's changed, or do you feel like it has grown in light of the three now that we know of assassination attempts of President Trump?
Well, I think it's worse because you have what we call Trump derangement syndrome, which is saturated not just in the so-called mainstream media, but also within, online and social media on the internet. And so it's far worse than it was. I mean, somebody said there have been 10 foiled assassination attempts against Trump. We know of 3. We know the sort of big 3, Butler and the one in the golf course there in Florida, and now this. We know of 3, but certainly the tempo has increased. And, somebody asked the president, why is this happening? And he made a point. The more effective the president is, the more likely they are to get shot. That's what appears to be. Garfield, McKinley, Lincoln, Trump, Garfield, McKinley, Lincoln, Kennedy, all assassinated. And there's another one whose name is Garfield, McKinley, Lincoln, and Kennedy. But there have been multiple assassination attempts. They went after Andrew Jackson, when he was very controversial at the time when he wanted to eliminate the National Bank of the United States. Andrew Jackson, along with Thomas Jefferson, hated the national banks, and They went after him. They, and in Trump's case, with the reforms he's brought in and his taking aim at the deep state like he has, that's really set him off a lot. So, I'm glad nobody really went after, Obama or Clinton or Carter or anybody like that. But they're weak presidents. Weak, and they might have been, all the Republican presidents have been despised by the left, but not to the extent that Trump is. So, to answer your question, I think it's gotten worse. And it's gotten worse because of social media, because the media, it used to be that Walter Cronkite, we know that Walter Cronkite was liberal, but when he reported, he was a journalistic professional. And with Peter Jennings, John Chancellor, they're all liberal, but they were journalistic professionals. You wouldn't know that because they tried to show some objectivity and balance in the way they reported, but not anymore. And so it's just cascaded down. A lot of it has to do with the media. If the so-called, and I say so-called mainstream media, you can't control social media so much, but it's so-called mainstream media, at least try to go back to a journalistic standard of objectivity. And the goal, when you're talking about a journalistic standard of objectivity, is not to play your hand into who you personally support, just to report the news and to do it in a balanced way. And if the mainstream media went back to that would help some. Mainstream media is less relevant than it used to be for many reasons, not only because of the explosion of social media, but so there are many more outlets that we can get our information. Like your wonderful network, for example, Donna, is one. But also because it's not just the explosion of other alternatives, but it's their continued migration to leftist, opinion journalism and op-ed journalism rather than reporting the facts. People have been turned off it. It's driven people away from it. So, you hear once in a while, CNN is going to come in and try to change a little bit. Maybe they've changed a little bit. Maybe not. You've got CBS when they change. CBS News, I hear, is going off the air. And we're going to go off the air. And so they've done it to themselves, but I think it's also driven this era that we're in of increased political violence. And unfortunately, there's nothing fortunate or unfortunate about it, but what we're actually seeing is leftist violence against conservatives. That's what we're seeing primarily. And when you consider the source of who's fomenting all that hatred and all that violence, it is the mainstream media and social media. So I think we're in a situation far worse and more dangerous than before.
I think so too. Let's go into a commercial break. We'll be right back in just a minute. So everybody hang in there.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you.
Finding the right home isn't just about bedrooms and square footage. It's about comfort, security, and the feeling you get the moment you walk through the door. That's why so many families across Greenwood and the Lakelands area trust Jenny Ferguson with Keller Williams. And I'll tell you from personal experience, Jenny was my realtor, and she truly cares about her clients. Jenny takes the time to listen, to understand what matters most, and to guide you every step of the way, whether you're buying your first home, upgrading, or ready to sell. Because this isn't just a transaction, it's your life. With local knowledge, personal care, and a commitment to getting it right, Jenny Ferguson makes the process simple and even enjoyable. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, now's the time to make your move. Call Jenny Ferguson with Keller Williams in Greenwood today and take the next step toward a place you'll truly love coming home to. Good afternoon, Sunshine. Medical Minute brought to you by Dr. Chuck with Lakeland's Chiropractic, where an ounce of prevention is worth what? A pound of cure. So what is the Beamer? Okay, now the Beamer uses very gentle pulsed electromagnetic signals. This will stimulate healthy muscles and it supports the temporary blood flow. Now let's talk Beamer and circulation support. Now the Beamer gently supports natural circulation in healthy muscles. Now that's what I call natural health. Thank you so much for watching your Medical Minute, brought to you by Dr. Chuck. You know who he's with. He's with Lakeland's Chiropractic, where an ounce of prevention is worth what? A pound of cure. I hope you have a super duper awesome rest of the afternoon. You take care. Shine your style at Kiss My Glass right here in the Anderson Mall. There's a place where style meets sparkle. At Kiss My Glass, every piece is handcrafted, custom designed, and made to shine just like you. Owner Beth Gibson brings creativity to life with stunning custom tumblers, gifts, and one-of-a-kind pieces you won't find anywhere else. Look for the perfect gift or something uniquely you, from bold and glamorous to simple and elegant. There's something for every style, so stop by, get inspired, and leave with something unforgettable. Kiss My Glass inside the Anderson Mall, Anderson, South Carolina, where your sparkle begins. Be sure to check out Kiss My Glass on Facebook for updates and specials and gift ideas. Okay, good afternoon. We're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to play Don Brown with me. This makes me think, when I'm in the corporate world, I'll never go back, by the way. I love what I'm doing now. I'm on, I don't have to ask questions. There was a time when I was in the corporate world that people, like my competitors, were attacking me. And I spent a lot of my time defending myself until my boss one day said, "Be glad you are." And I said, "Why would I be glad of that? I'm spending too much time defending my dignity, with all the stuff going on." He said, "This is the way it is. They would not be attacking you if you weren't outplaying them. You're outplaying them. You're successful. You're winning trips. You're doing all this stuff." He said, "They're jealous." That's what I see. I'm nowhere near a Donald Trump, but what I'm saying is when you're doing the right thing and you're focusing on your job, you're lazy. This is the way it is.
That's exactly right, Donna. When the bomber is over the target, that's when most of the shots come. No question about that. The more effective, the more the criticism. I mean, you look at the greatest man ever to walk the earth, Jesus Christ, who was also God, was criticized and viciously attacked. And then when you look at political leaders who have been affected, it's a very, very sad thing. Reagan, Lincoln, they all were viciously attacked. And the thing about it is, whoever, if it was your boss or whoever it was that told you, don't worry so much about what they're saying, that's a good perspective. And sometimes, when I write an op-ed or when when I'm interviewed and all of a sudden the left gets mad, I kind of laugh it off. I had to get used to it. I'm an author, and my first novel that came out in 2005, Treason, it became an international bestseller. And there's some things that cause that, but I found that the reviews on Amazon were either 5-star reviews or 1-star reviews. And the 1-star reviews would call me a bigot and thisophobe and thatophobe, and they weren't giving me 1-star reviews because they didn't like the storyline or because I didn't have good dialogue or because the character development was weak or any of the things you would normally look at when you're criticizing or when you're critiquing a book. Character development, structure, storyline, dialogue, those are the big four. They were attacking me because they didn't like the political messaging that was in the book. So it was bigot, dysophobe, thatophobe, racist, anything. But then I realized, hey, the book was over to Target. And so it took me a while. As an author, taking those arrows, from the left because they don't like the Christian conservative, worldview that my novels initially were pushing intentionally, by the way. at first I was bothered by it because I wasn't used to that type of massive criticism. Then now I laugh about it. When they call me a name, I kind of laugh about it. I think that's what. And the other thing, the Bible says, and I've given this advice to some friends before: don't argue with the fool. The fool will only rage and scoff. That's from Proverbs. And so you kind of have to pick and choose when you're going to engage, because if we spent all of our time engaging, then the enemy wins, because then it takes away from our attention, our energy and our time and our ability to focus on the target. So there's some discretion that we got to use on when to respond and when not to respond. I think most of the time you don't respond. You look at Jesus himself. He was brought before Pilate, and he would not answer one single accusation. Then Pilate said, "Don't you know who I am?" And Jesus said, "You wouldn't be where you were unless the Father had given you." He pushed back, but he made a decision not even to defend himself in that situation. But he could have. We've done a lot of things. So we just have to have discretion. That doesn't mean you don't defend yourself, but you just got to have discretion and know when to do it, when not to do it. And most of the time, it is a time-consuming process when we let it overwhelm us. We should never do that.
Well, the older I get, the more I realize quite a few things. I'm not totally wise yet. I'll never reach that pinnacle. But there's some things I really pay attention to. One of those would be someone like you. Okay, so let's say I don't know you. Okay, I know you as a wonderful human being, but let's just say I don't. And I'm looking at the Amazon reviews, and I'm seeing a bunch of garbage from people. That's going to make me buy your book. Actually, I'm going to go, oh, that's a bunch of leftist morons. What do they know? I would be thinking that. Then I would go ahead and buy it. And I think it backfires in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way, because you and I think like we're accustomed to, if the lefties are attacked. It's just like when they attack a movie. They went after, for example, Tom Hanks' new Top Gun. They didn't like that at all, because there wasn't any, I don't remember any illicit sex in it. I don't remember them trying to force unnatural relationship situations into the movie like we see so often on Netflix. It was just a good, solid military film. Of evil, and it blew up, but of course they criticized it because it didn't have that stuff. So when the mainstream critics attack something, or when somebody is saying so and so is a racist or whatever, the enemy, the left will call you a racist simply because they disagree with your political views on taxation or DEI or overregulation or whatever it might be. It's become the go-to accusation, and it's kind of like turning to the boy that cried wolf. But I agree with you. If you see a bunch of leftists that are attacking someone or attacking their work, it's worth at least listening to the person they're attacking or reading their work.
Absolutely. I've got to ask you another question. This pertains to Prince Charles coming to the United States, and I thought it was rather funny. So they're okay with Prince, or actually King Charles now. They're okay with King. I'm talking about the Democrats, and I'm talking about when he was speaking to Congress. They were standing ovation and everything else. Now, we do the no king protest, right? We don't want a king and all this kind of stuff. But you're ranting and you're raving and you're clapping and everything else when I keep calling him Prince, when King Charles is up there addressing the Congress. Don't you find that just a little, I thought we didn't want kings.
Yeah, precisely. Talk about hypocrisy right in front of your own face. No kings, and they're giving a standing ovation. But of course, their hypocrisy gets exposed all the time. But they have. They're always going to, for the left, it's about preservation of power. And many of the things Trump has advocated, such as a border wall, and such as deporting illegals, especially those that are violent. The left has argued these things in the past. They argued that when George W. Bush was in office. Nancy Pelosi did, Chuck Schumer did. Then when Trump comes in and advocates that, they're now opposed to it. And so this whole no kings thing is just a ruse, really, to give them an excuse to get media attention. But of course, when King Charles stands before the Congress, they cheer on him. They cheer him on like he's a rock star, and they're like foaming fans trying to get some of his clothing thrown at him or something. It's just ridiculous. It's also kind of hilarious.
Okay, so if I'm a pink-haired nose ring person, and they call on me to go and do the No King protest, I'm going to get my feelings hurt. I'm going to wonder why they didn't have me there. protesting this king who was actually speaking to the Congress. I mean, wouldn't you think that way if you had a brain? I mean, would you not?
Well, you use the correct phrase, if you had a brain. It's kind of like the theme in the movie The Wizard of Oz. I guess it was Scarecrow. It was a Tin Man. Excuse me, Tin Man didn't have a brain, I guess. And but the reason they're being subject to mass manipulation is they don't have brains. So there's no critical thinking. There's no questioning. There's none of that stuff. If we're the pink-haired, nose-ringed individuals who are out there on the side of the street saying no kings, no kings, no kings. Why can't they come and say no kings when King Charles shows up? Or why can't they even come here and speak? So, and what are they going to do next time? They're going to it's going to be kind of funny when they try to have another no kings rally, and you can just put pictures of them giving a standing ovation to the most prominent king right now, and probably on the planet, King Charles, British king's the most prominent of all the kings. So it's going to be kind of funny to see that.
If I were the marketing person for the Republicans, I would already be working on that, because you're not going to have more. I would have all the signs up there. Well, what's this? This is the king right here, and you were doing standing ovation.
The Democrats giving a king a standing ovation. Exactly.
No. Okay, let's talk again about public safety. It has to be frightening now if you're running for public office. I don't care what side you're on. Okay, in light of what happened over the past weekend with the assassination attempt, wouldn't you think everybody is under the gun now, especially if you are, I'm not going to say Republican, because there are some flakes out there who are Republicans running for office too. I'm going to say if you're a Christian conservative and you're running for office, wouldn't there be just a little bit of concern about being in the public eye at this point?
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, I was in the public eye for a while when I ran for the U.S. Senate, and always had Smith & Wesson nearby personally, just so you know. But it's something that if you're committing yourself to service use, it's just part of the danger of the profession. In fact, Trump was talking the other night about, and he's correct, that being a president, or maybe even a presidential candidate, statistically is far more dangerous than being a NASCAR driver or any other profession, because of the number of presidents that have been killed, and then the number of assassination attempts there have been. It is a dangerous situation. You certainly have to do that and realize that very few elected officials even have security. I mean, the president and the vice president and former presidents have Secret Service details, and they should have Secret Service details. But you're talking about other elected officials. I mean, governors normally have 2 or 3 members of the state police assigned to them, and that's security. But it isn't the level of, sophistication that Secret Service has. Senate candidates, U.S. senators, members of Congress, sometimes have security and sometimes don't, depending on who they are. I've seen it both ways. If I've been with Nancy Mace, she's got security, others don't. I won't say who doesn't, but it is a concern. It certainly is, and it's an increasing concern the more crazy these people get. I mean, this fool who came in the other day with a shotgun, obviously. First off, I don't know how many what he knows about guns. Shotgun doesn't have great range, but buckshot can do a lot of damage. And the ones who are probably the most, unless he'd gotten up to the stage with it and not been tackled, if he started opening fire when he went in there, the ones who would have been hurt most have been members of the press and others who were sitting out in the audience. Of course, there were cabinet members in the audience also. But he was intent on doing mass damage when he shot him, and it is a concern. There's not a perfect answer to it. You're running for office. I ran for office. I don't have money to hire armed security. I don't have money to buy television ads, and so it costs a lot of money to have armed security. And even then, you're not. It's not an impervious situation where they can't always get through. So,
well, let me ask you another question. Was this more about not necessarily assassinating anyone, but trying to have smaller crowds when it comes to any kind of a Trump event?
Well, Trump's been asked that very question, and he's saying he doesn't want to necessarily go inside because he likes larger crowds. But even so, we were inside the other night when that attempt was made. Yeah. The assassination of President Lincoln was inside. assassination of President McKinley was at World's Fair. I'm just thinking about some of these situations. JFK was outside when he was shot. Reagan was outside when he was shot. Fortunately, he lived. It was a close call. He was moving outside from his speech to his presidential motorcade when Hinckley somehow got through. Certainly, you could argue that an outside venue, there's more vulnerability for many reasons with an outside venue. But I hate to see, when you capitulate like that, they've won. I think the solution is you have to get better control. You certainly have to have better control when you're outside like that. And I don't think Trump's going to want to go along with it, but there's some in the future that may. In other words, limit themselves to inside more highly controlled environments. I mean, the environment at the hotel the other night, the Washington Hilton, was pretty controlled inside the room, inside the ballroom. But even there, you have a guy with a shotgun and a 38, who knows what else, get to the outer band of the perimeter before he was taken down. So, I mean, what if you'd have had multiple guys? I mean, theoretically, I don't even want to think about it. What do you have multiple people trying to storm in? It becomes a different situation.
Yeah, what if it was a bank robbery? A bank robbery is usually a bunch of idiot hustlers who go in and they create all kinds of havoc. You're absolutely right. But I want to ask you, this is a question I've been asked by a lot of our audience. Not that the guy had a great bod or anything like that, but why was he shirtless?
I wondered the same thing, and I don't know. It may be that the Secret Service forced him to take his shirt off to make sure he wasn't having anything, a bomb or something strapped in. I don't know. That's possible. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a good question, and I would like to have an explanation. I mean, if you were going around shirtless, you stand out even more. So yeah. My assumption was they forced him to take his shirt off to make sure he didn't have any type of bomb strap on him. That's my assumption. I don't know the answer to the question. But,
That's a good one. That's the best one out there. So let me ask you another question, then we have to go into a commercial break. Okay, so I'm talking again to our purple and pink-haired people who have nose rings. Okay, so you're all against. You say, "Oh, I'm against guns. I'm against this. I'm against that." What are your thoughts about Democrats who are in public office and they're out in the field and they have a security team around them? What do you think they have, slingshots or guns?
Right. It goes back to the whole thing of rules for thee, but not for me. No guns, no guns, no gun, except for my security detail used to have guns. Yeah. They're in a higher strata, and us little people aren't entitled to protect ourselves. Right. Let them go. Let them, these Democrats who are anti-Second Amendment, let them put their money where their mouth is and have their security detail use pea shooters and slingshots, being armed with pea shooters, slingshots, and see how long they remain in favor of gun control. So,
I'll even argue that point because as a kid growing up, I had a slingshot. And I could do some damage with a slingshot.
Yeah, you could do that. So let the Democrats, they just tell them this. If Donna says that it can be effective, let them arm the security detail with slingshots.
Donna was a tomboy. Donna knows. Okay, all right. All right, let's go into a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Lowe's knows that the projects you build in spring are the ones you can't wait to share. It's why we make sure you have our best deals with My Lowe's Rewards and that you get help from people who've
been there,
done that.
Try this.
This spring, we'll help you build something rewarding.
Hey, Stan. What's up? I made you something. Oh, thank you. And I got something for you. You grew these? Of course.
Lowe's knows how to help you spring.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer.
Yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Okay, we are back. My name is Donna, and I am your host of Donna's television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching. Continue sending email. I love the emails you've been sending lately, pink-haired folks with, nose rings and stuff. But anyway, thank you so much. And the number of people who wanted to know why the guy was shirtless was just, I mean, I couldn't believe it. That was like probably the biggest question. Why was a dude, and by the way, dude, you apparently didn't have a good bod, okay, because people were actually mentioning that as well. But thank you again so much for watching and for sending the email. I love it. I really did. Don Brown is with me. He is an attorney, author, and a speaker. Let's talk about your books before we dive back in.
Well, Kangaroo Court is the most recent, and in that case, we look at Democrats' use of political prosecutions, and I would recommend folks read that. You know, we are now getting a couple of indictments, and I think appropriately so, by the new Justice Department. I say the new Justice Department at the top branches in office. But Kangaroo Court looks at prosecutions not only against President Trump and political leaders, but against average Americans simply for exercising their constitutional rights. Like the prosecutions against Paul Houck and other pro-life fathers, Mark Houck, and Paul, I think it was last name, in Nashville there, who were prosecuted for being pro-life. Prosecutions against the cartoonist Douglas Mackey in Florida, prosecuted for simply drawing a cartoon about Hillary Clinton voters. I mean, exercise your First Amendment right. Paul Vaughn and Mark Houck are the two names that came back to me. The pro-life fathers. Prosecutions against the couple out in Missouri. You may remember them during the George Floyd riots, who were simply holding their guns. And so we look at those prosecutions against ordinary Americans, primarily for exercising their constitutional rights. These are read that people ought to take a look at. And we're doing some other things as well. We just had an op-ed published this week in American Thinker about the critical shipbuilding shortages that we're facing, not only in the United States Navy, but in the U.S. Merchant Marine Force. We can't build a ship in this country anymore, Don. I mean, the Chinese are out producing us 200 to 1, and it's a national emergency. So take a look at some of my writings on American Thinker also. That was a 26th op-ed we've had posted there. So we'd love to have folks read some of those and give some feedback as well.
Absolutely. And they can buy your books, Amazon.com. All of that is your name, and you'll be able to find it. I'm going to ask you the stupidest question I have ever asked in the entire 21 years of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Forgive me for this question. It's really dumb. Okay, can we ever, let's just pretend we had no more news media. Do you think we could find common ground between the Democrats and the Republicans? See how dumb that question is?
Well, I think if you were to, first of all, we were talking about this in an earlier segment. When you go back to the era of Walter Cronkite, Peter Jennings, John Chancellor, Eric Sevareid, people like that, those folks were liberal, but they had a journalistic standard of objectivity. And during those days, you could find more common ground politically. When the media wasn't trying to gaslight and go to war against conservatives, you could find more common ground because people were looking at solutions more from a common sense paradigm, which is not happening so much anymore. So if you eliminate the mainstream media and take them out of the equation, you're eliminating a lot of the hot, gaslit propaganda that makes it impossible politically, in many cases, to find proper common ground. So I say, yeah, if you can eliminate that, you certainly have a better opportunity to go back and try to take a deep breath and figure out what a common sense solution will be to many problems.
Okay, I feel like I lost a few brain cells just from asking that stupid question. Okay, and where you're going to go with that. Okay, now let's get the brains back. Okay, now we know that social media intensifies situations continuously. It's like it's ongoing. People who don't know what in the world they're talking about are going to make comments, and they're going to appear logical to some people. To folks like you and me, it's like, what are you saying? How could social media be toned down, or is that even possible? Well, that's another dumb question.
Well, the thing is that the Democrats tried to control social media during the COVID era. And, I was bumped off of Twitter and Facebook a number of times for criticizing the jab and criticizing the mask. So you got to be careful from one standpoint about trying to control it. But here's the thing about it. When you are actually using a language to advocate violence, that's a different ball of wax. That's what we're seeing a lot. We're seeing Democrats and leftists kid on social media use language advocating political violence. And that's where you kind of draw the line. You know, I mean, there's a First Amendment, and we will defend that First Amendment. The First Amendment doesn't allow you to go into well, at least it doesn't allow you without the realistic possibility of prosecution to go into a movie theater and yell fire, fire, fire when there's no fire. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening. You're having, leftists in particular use social media to yell fire, 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 and to incite violence. And that's where you got to draw the line. I think you have to treat that speech like you would treat the classic scenario of yelling fire in a movie theater. And when it's something that's intended to lead to physical violence, that's where you got to draw the line. I think that's got to be a litmus test.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Right. Now, when we were questioning the mask and questioning the jabs, we weren't advocating violence at all. We were
save lives.
Right. Yeah. We were using science or the lack of science. We were looking, for when I was attacking the mask, and I would do it all over again. You had multiple medical journals from the University of North Carolina, from Johns Hopkins, from Harvard, you name it, who had published studies that masks, especially cloth masks, do not stop viral penetration. What was the COVID? It was a virus. And yet you had Fauci and the Attorney General do a 180-degree flip one day and say wear a mask. And so we were questioning that based upon evidence. That was saying go out and harm somebody. It's a whole big different ball. I say that more phrase a lot ball of wax. Whole different scenario. And so that's where I think you got to kind of draw the line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now I'm thinking about the kids. Okay, this lunatic was a school teacher. I don't know what age students, but it's just I don't care if they're 5 years old to 17 years old. I don't care. How can families talk to the kids about violent events? Especially, the kids who are under this lunatic had to be somehow questioning what happened to the teacher.
Well, it goes back. First of all, the NEA is a left-wing organization. The teachers' organizations, teachers' unions, are Democrat left-wing, and it's drawing in, and they're teaching. When you go into an education school, ECU, UNC Charlotte, University of South Carolina, a lot of times the professors are teaching from a left-wing perspective. And when it comes to the public schools, we got to have more choice. I mentioned a moment ago, or in another segment, charter schools. My little niece goes to a charter school in Eastern North Carolina, which is they teach Bible as part of history. That's in a charter school. The charter school is a school choice situation whereby those families can take the money they've been paying to public schools through their taxes and apply it to the charter school. That makes sense. So the public schools have to have more competition. Competition makes things better, and we've got to find a way to start teaching more conservative principles. It's not an overnight solution to it. If you take a big school system like Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles, or Los Angeles County, number one, they're rewarding leftist thinking in their teachers, and number two, are certainly not vetting them to the point that that you can prevent this sort of thing. And if you have someone with a conservative background, you're not going to get hired. We've got to have a better balance in the philosophy of elementary school teachers, high school teachers, and college professors as well. And that's something that we have to focus on as a society. It's just got to be done. And we got to have better school choice too, to protect our kids and to, yeah.
I think we have to have better parents too. And the reason I'm saying that is, through this thing where parents say, well, you got to let your little angels fly. You got to let them make their own decisions about things. Let them decide what sex they want to be, stupid stuff like that. But before somebody hammers me about that, I was pretty strict with my son, and he was very successful. I would say when you have a 30-year mortgage and you pay it off in 10 years, you're a successful person. So kudos to Brad for that.
Well, the Bible does say spare the rod, spoil a child. That means you're supposed to beat a kid, but spare mercilessly. But spare the rod does spoil the child. Does say use some type of a corporal punishment if you need to, and have guidelines. You train a child up in the way of the Lord, and then they're going to be okay eventually, and that's a biblical promise. And when you're talking about you got to have better parents, you're correct. But part of the problem is you have parents who have been that are raising kids now that are the product of liberal indoctrination in liberal public schools, who have been trained to believe, let them decide on their own, is an option. It's not an option. Not if you want to protect the kid and want the kid to have the fullest life. It's a pathway to destruction. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation. The problem with parents is largely the problem of the garbage they've been fed in schools for the last, couple of generations. And there are some younger parents who are seeing the light. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And we have to continue to use platforms like this to get the truth out.
I think so, but look, this is another deal right here. Okay, so people say you're taking the freedom away from your child if you don't let them express themselves. But the problem is they don't know what they're expressing. They're too young to absolutely know what's happening. But that's the problem right there. Parents who won't take responsibility for the kids, and it's hard because I was a single mom for quite a while. And I'm going to tell you what, that was tough because you had to be the good guy and the bad guy at the same time because I was the one raising him.
Right.
And so, but you have to make tough decisions as parents. You have to. I'm not talking about beating the head. I probably didn't spank Brad a half dozen times in his entire lifetime. I didn't have to because I was more stubborn than he was. I just simply said, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that.
How are you going to teach them about boundaries later on? And giving a child total and absolute freedom in decision making, everything else is a dangerous thing. We have to put limits on children, and we have to teach them good from evil and put limits on their conduct. Dr. James Dobson wrote some excellent books on discipline and parental, and parenting, and some of those books need to be mandated, I think, for young parents who are coming in for counseling and other things as well. But it's the entire public school mentality these days, and I'm not saying all teachers have this mentality, but from the National Education Association, the teaching think tanks, all come down. They're saying the very same thing. I knew of a couple once that would not discipline a kid, but when the kid was, let me rephrase, their version of discipline was sending the kid to the happy chair. Me, I wouldn't be able to sit in the happy chair or any other chair when I got on the line. I can tell you that right now. And I didn't like it at the time, but it was one of the best. That's what I needed. One of the best things for me. So God bless my daddy and some good teachers that had some of those paddles with the holes in them and everything else. So you just took about one whack and that was it.
Well, I had to tell you, the first thing I thought about the assassination attempt, my first thought was someone didn't use that big board of education that had the holes in it, like.
Yeah, that guy that tried to break in with a shotgun, somebody should have beat his can with a paddle a few times when he was coming up, beat some sense into him, But see, someone like that guy, 31 years old. Obviously, he's a product of the education system within the last generation. You and I came up before he did, and I remember when I started school in the first grade, we still had prayer and we still had Pledge of Allegiance and all the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And as time went on, by the time I became a senior in high school, that dissipated. And it dissipated really in the 60s and 70s. That's when when I was in school, that's when the slope started downward. We got to get back to it. We got to get back to teaching morality.
Yeah, something, I'm older than you, so I had to walk to school up. I'm going up the hill and snow both ways, okay, up and down. So anyway, a few years older than you, even though I grew up in Alabama. But anyway, thank you again, Don, so much for being on the show with me. It's always a pleasure. And man, I feel like I lost something because I didn't get to talk to you within the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, I'm back, and I'm glad that I'm back, and it's good to be with you, and look forward to being with you and Phil even more as we move forward. Absolutely. Thank you. Can't wait. Thank you guys so much for watching. Continue with the emails. I love the ones with the pink hair and the nose rings. Those are really cool ones. So thank you for sending them. Donna at donnasedge.com. Donna at donnasedge.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Donna's Designs offers a line of handmade memorial, wedding, and keepsake jewelry that launched back in 1970. I'm a self-trained jewelry designer, and I will work closely with you to create unique designs you can love and treasure for years to come. Whether that be flowers that were used in a funeral arrangement or stones you found on the beach at a memorable trip, call me at 256-659-4319 and let's think of the possibilities.